The Illuminati's scientific beginnings, their rituals, and quest for power are closely tied to the Vatican's own shrouded history. But hidden deep within the Vatican are secret documents which reportedly could be used to destroy the Church. Has the Illuminati infiltrated the Vatican? Have they found the hidden documents? And what will happen if they, or another secret society, finds them?
The Roman Church obviously is among the richest, most powerful institutions on the earth and has been for many centuries. And that's simply because if you go back to the time of the Middle Ages, the Church commanded everything.
For over 1,000 years, the Vatican influenced world events while wielding vast control over both kingdoms and royalty.
They told the kings what to do, they loaned money, they ran every facet of everyone's life. And today, of course, with the democracy, freedom springing up around the world, they have lost some of that power, but they are still a very formidable institution. One example of the power of the Roman Church is that in the 1980s, they were allowed to open an embassy in Washington, D.C., which is still there today. So we recognize the Vatican as a separate nation, a separate state, and we have diplomatic relations with it, even though to many people this flies in the face of our contention that we have separation of church and state.
The Vatican's location is a key part of Roman Catholic history, one that goes to the core of its faith.
According to Catholic and Vatican history, the bones of St. Peter are buried underneath the cupola of St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, Rome.
But what if the Vatican is not built over the remains of St. Peter? What if something else is buried underneath its ancient floors?
This, though, is open to debate, and it is a contentious issue. Many people suggesting they're not his bones at all. Many people suggesting that they're actually the bones of an animal.
Since its founding by Constantine the Great, nearly 400 years after the death of Jesus, the Vatican has been dogged by accusations of conspiracies and cover-ups, rumors which have continued for centuries. Some of those secrets could undermine the very foundation of the Church. It is information that the Church does not want to fall into enemy hands, like the Illuminati.
We have the catacombs under the Vatican, which hardly anyone has ever been able to penetrate. All kinds of wild stories circulate about that, up to and including the possibility that they have the mummified body of Jesus, that they have lots of ancient artifacts, lots of historical objects that could point to a more honest and true understanding of human origins.
So there is that reality behind it. There is, it's a secret place. It is secret for many reasons, and one is that it gets up to things it doesn't want people to know about.
The Church believes that St. Peter was given the authority by Christ to set up his church forever because St. Peter was the first person to see the risen Christ. This is a kind of article of faith of the Catholic Church. And all you have to do is read the New Testament to discover that it's wildly untrue. The first person to see the risen Christ was actually Mary Magdalene. In fact, it's not even true that Peter was the first male disciple to see the risen Jesus. The first male disciple was John the Beloved. So what's going on there then?
For centuries, questions such as these could not be raised in large parts of the world without fear of persecution. It goes to the heart of the Church. Was St. Peter really the one chosen to start the Church? Is the Vatican the true resting place of his body? Early scientists were some of the first to question. With other religions growing in popularity, the Church had a lot at stake.
And the Catholic Church just took this position that we have to be the one faith. We can't have anybody else believing in these other gods or polytheism or some other type of god. It's got to be the Catholic Church or nothing. The Catholic Church took this position, I think, in its first maybe 400 years of existence, that they, at that time when there were also these other faiths competing for people's souls, and so to speak, that they wanted to be the one church that would dominate over all the other faiths that were out there.
Adding to the controversy is the Vatican's enormous financial wealth, and more importantly, how it was achieved.
I think the Vatican is secretive about its finances because of the controversy over how much money flows into the church. They don't want to detail how much money they have, how much money they're worth. In fact, it's really amazing, but I have found in my work as a journalist in this country that even local bishops, local priests, they only know their picture, their small piece of the puzzle. They do not have entree to general accounting numbers as to how much money or where it goes or who's getting it or anything else.
The Vatican has always been a very secretive place. There's even, well within living memory, there have been sort of great financial scandals involving the Vatican Bank and things like that.
This enormous collection of wealth has had one other unintentional consequence: making the job of Pope one of the most dangerous in the world. While Dan Brown's Angels and Demons plot revolved around the fictional assassination of a pope, his research was well based in historical fact.
Could a pope be murdered? Well, it's a question that Brown certainly brings up within Angels and Demons, and it's certainly something that undoubtedly has happened. Celestine V being a classic example, 5-inch nail in his head, maybe kind of gives that one away as a slightly suspicious circumstance.
Stephen Ostro, a professor of art history, has researched the early centuries of the Vatican, uncovering a legacy of persecution and violence.
The early popes were almost to a one martyred because they represented a tradition, a faith that was contrary to the Roman law. So if you go into St. Peter's, for example, all the piers of the main nave are adorned with portraits of the early popes, each and every one of whom was martyred for his faith. So popes have long been killed because they are not just religious but also political figures. And so, yes, there's been intrigue, yes, popes have been poisoned, murdered, martyred. But I think in the modern era, let's just say since the 17th century, it hasn't been quite so bad as it was in the early days.
The battles of the early church were over power, world domination, the same goal as other secret societies.
Scary times are good times for the church. The agenda of all secret societies that have a negative impact is to rule the masses. So that the masses become slaves. But it all starts with the idea of a few elite people looking down their noses at the rest of humanity.
This early history of the church was violent, and like other kingdoms of its time, the church hierarchy was filled with hidden agendas by groups competing for world power. A new word developed to describe the concealed schemes of this time.
Calling the church a pornocracy is an interesting use of the term. It's not a widely accepted or used term. It literally means government by harlots, by prostitutes, hence the root porno. And it specifically and historically refers to a time in the 10th century, beginning with a fairly inept pope named Sergius III, and a series of popes who ruled by less than moral means. Apparently Sergius I, for example, had a number of competing cardinals killed in order so that he could assume the papal throne. The term got applied then because of these very powerful women, members of the aristocratic noble families of Rome, who kind of held the strings on the papacy and determined who would be pope at any given point, hence the term applied then.
Much of this sordid history and internal secret battles is said to be sealed away in this building, 100 yards behind the Great Basilica on the Vatican grounds. the archives. This sprawling complex is said to house the greatest collection of sacred books and folios in the world. Some have not been seen for centuries.